Hi, and welcome back to Wildman Wheels. Today, we got a chainsaw. I've actually gotten requests from several of you out there saying, hey, I've got a chainsaw or I've got a weed eater that's not working. It's been sitting for a year or two. Maybe it's just been sitting over the winter, but you can't get it running and you don't know how. So today, I'm going to be teaching you, we're going to be going through this bad boy step by step. I'm going to show you how to take it apart, how to clean it, how to get it running again, and most importantly, how to tune it so it actually runs well and you can get some actual work done with it. So let's get started. All right, so the first thing you want to do, and this goes with any small engine, right? You want to check and make sure that it's got compression. So before you do anything, just pull on the cord. That's definitely got compression. It's critical. As much as you might not think about it, it's the simple steps, but you got to start with step number one. This guy right here, oh, those are flats. It's old school enough that these are flat screws. The second thing you want to do, pull off any covers that's going to give you access to the carburetor. There we go. So we got that cover off. You can see we actually have the air filter is right here. Let's go ahead and pull this off. There's our air filter. Now, for the most part with weed eaters and chainsaws, a lot of times the air filters is more or less, like if you look at this, it's just literally just a piece of felt. It's more or less just to keep the chunks out. It's not like an air filter like you would think of like in your car. All right. Let's see here. We're gonna go ahead and pull this plate off. We want to get down to the actual carburetor itself. Careful, don't drop anything. You want to go fishing for it. Perfect. Got our little cover out of the way. Here's our carburetor. Just a dinky little guy. You can see it right here. Now, if you look inside of here, we got some fuel lines. I think this is going to fire right up. I think just some fresh gas, and I think this thing will fire right up. Looks to me like the choke is working. The throttle linkage is working. Everything looks perfectly fine in here. But I just want to take a look at it. Let's just look at it. We want to make sure and go ahead and check our fuel lines and make sure all of our fuel lines going everywhere. Everything's nice and tight. Nothing's dry rotted, cracked, or broken. Also, another big thing is your primer bulb. You want to make sure the primer bulb doesn't have any cracks, it's not broken, and you want to be able to squeeze it. It needs to feel nice and soft and supple. If it's hard and crunchy, you want to go ahead and replace that. They're very easy to replace. You can just go online. The first thing what I recommend doing is taking it out, right? Let's say this one was bad. We'd want to go ahead and pop this out. Might have to take a couple more panels off to get down to it, but we want to pop it out, and then we want to look at it and inspect it, figure out exactly what it looks like. There might be a part number on the side of it. There might be a manufacturer's name on the side of it, something like that, that we'll be able to use when we go online on Amazon to go and find a primer bulb. They're kind of generic. They're kind of like a primer bulb's a primer bulb. You know, but there could be small variations to it. You make sure it has the right number of ports on the back. Does it have 2 ports, 3 ports, right? Make sure it's the right diameter. Make sure it's going to fit into the case they're going to be using, and then go ahead and order it up, and you should be good to go. Also, this fuel line right here, I bought this at local Ace Hardware. They have a lot of times Ace Hardwares or maybe your local hardware store will be a steel dealer. Steel as in chainsaws and weed eaters and things like that. They use silicone fuel line, and you can go in there with a couple pieces of your fuel line and say, hey, I need some of this, and show it to them, and they'll cut you off some little chunks, and for a couple bucks, and you have some nice high quality silicone fuel line that will last for years and years to come. So make sure your fuel lines are good. If they're not, take pictures. Get in there and see, where does this fuel line connect over here? You don't want to get any of that stuff backwards. So now that we know all of this looks pretty good, in all honesty, let's, I'm just going to put this plate back on, because this is the plate that holds the carburetor in place. This is what actually kind of locks it on there. But by getting that out of the way, we're able to inspect all the hoses, the back of the primer bulb, see if there's any leaks or anything. This doesn't quite look right. This one, this guy right here, just so you know, the little clip that holds the choke lever here to the actual linkage was missing, and I put it together with a paper clip. There's literally a paper clip in there holding the choke lever on. It's been like that for years. Works great. It's still there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is you need to verify, double check year specific, and make sure one of these is bar oil and one of them is gasoline. And I've seen them both ways. Perfect example, I have a little McCulloch down here, and on this McCulloch, this one right here is the gas tank, this one right here is the bar oil. On this home light right here, this one's the bar oil and this one's the gas tank. So double check your specific model and make sure the right one is the right one. You don't want to put gasoline in the bar oil and bar oil in the gasoline. It's not going to necessarily ruin anything, but it's definitely going to make it a lot more difficult. All right. Next thing you want to do, personally myself, I prefer to use pre-mixed two-stroke gasoline. It's just a lot easier. It's good gasoline. It's non-ethanol gasoline, and that's critical on small engines. Ethanol gasoline, if it's let to sit in the tank and in the carburetor, will gum the carburetor up, and you're going to have to take the carburetor apart and clean it or replace it every single year. So it's just easier. Yeah, does it cost a little bit more? Sure. Is it easier? Yep. We're going to go ahead and fill that bad boy all the way to the brim. All right, I'm not going to put any bar oil in it right now just because I'm not too worried about it. If we get it running, when we get it running, I will go, well, what in tarnation? All right. When we get it running, I'll go ahead and throw some bar oil in there. But for now, I just want to get this thing cranked over. Let's go ahead and take the spark plug out and just take a look at it. That's a really good looking spark plug. We look at the spark plug, and the porcelain in the middle, when it's brand new, is going to be the same color white. If you look on the inside of it, you don't want to see black. What you want to see is brown. This one's exactly what you want to see. Let me show you. See, if you look really close, see how there's no carbon buildup, and see how that porcelain right there in the middle, see how it's brown. When the spark plug's brand new, it'll be white, just like this. But see that how it's brown all the way around. Nice, clean brown. It's not black, there's no soot buildup, and it's not a discolored. Also, the actual electrode in the middle, the edges of it aren't worn off. See how nice and sharp those edges are? That means it's not eroding away on one side or the other. That means our gap is good. Because our porcelain is brown, instead of being black or discolored, it doesn't have any white flakies on it or anything like that. That tells us we have a perfect air-fuel mixture on this chainsaw, and it's running absolutely optimally. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and just put the spark plug into the spark plug boot. And I'm going to put the spark plug on the engine. Same thing like you would do on a car. You're trying to check for spark on a car, right? We're going to go ahead and turn the switch to the on position, and we're going to give it a little crank. I can see spark in there. Absolutely perfect. We got good spark. We got gas in there. I'm pretty sure this thing will fire right up. I haven't used this chainsaw person myself in probably 5 or 6 years. All right, now we're going to go ahead and just run the primer bulb. You'll hear some people say, only press the primer bulb 3 times. No, you might need to press the primer bulb, especially if it's been sitting for a while, several times. Whoa. The reason for that is because there's a diaphragm in the carburetor, and the primer bulb is working against that diaphragm. And a lot of times what happens is when that diaphragm hasn't had any gas in contact with it for quite a while, it can actually become a little bit hard and a little bit brittle, and it's not going to operate properly. That's why a lot of times when you try to pump your primer bulb and nothing happens, it's that. The other option is the primer bulb itself is bad. That's a very common thing. It'll crack, it'll break, like this guy right here. That primer bulb is garbage. We're going to have to replace it before we're going to be able to go any further with this project. Primer bulbs, as you can see, are generally just kind of pressed into place. This particular one only has 2 hoses going to it. We have one hose going directly to the carburetor, and we have one hose going directly to the fuel tank. Now from the fuel tank, we have a second line coming up here into the carburetor. Here's a close-up look of that primer bulb. So you can see I pumped on it a few times, and a crack developed right here. Also, the tip of it just disintegrated. It's pretty standard that these kind of do that. They are made from a silicone, but I have yet to see one of these hold up very long at all. I don't know if it's the gas that deteriorates them or if any kind of UV light is what deteriorates these. I don't know. But generally speaking, you'll replace 2 or 3 primer bulbs before you'll need to mess with the carburetor. All right, so I ran into town and I got me a new primer bulb. It's not the correct size, so I'm not going to be able to get it to attach into the chainsaw for now, but it's connected and it's working. So that'll at least get us to start and run, and then we'll be able to go get a new primer bulb online and get the correct one. Now, if your chainsaw, let's say, was running pretty well last time you used it and you shut it down and it seemed to be running just perfectly fine, it's just been sitting over the winter, I'm going to recommend to you to not make any adjustments to the tuning of the carburetor until it's ran for quite a while. A lot of times it's just gummed up, and getting some good fresh gasoline in there, just kind of flowing through it, will kind of bring it back around. It'll kind of help clean out the deposits inside the carburetor, any gum that might be inside there. It'll kind of work its way through. If you're having a really hard time just getting it to start, just getting it to run, then obviously you're going to want to just make some adjustments. The first thing you're going to want to do is turn the idle up, and then turn up your fuel mixture screws so it's rich. You want to try to get it started when it's too rich. You can at least get it started, and then at that point in time you can kind of back it down to where it should be. So we've got the primer bulb in here. We've pumped it a few times, and we're good to go. We actually just flooded it. Perfect. Well, at least we know we got gas in there. Okay, so let's turn that off. Because I did actually see some gas come out, got a little bit excited with it there. I'm going to go ahead and just try starting it without the choke. All right, so let's go ahead and give it full choke. Half choke. Okay, so we got it running. Let's simple as that. Now, It seems to be running pretty well, but we have to get the filter on. Do you hear how it changed? It kind of brought the idle down a little bit. That's kind of standard. You don't want to make any adjustments to your carburetor without the air filter on. On these smaller two-stroke engines like this, the air filter makes a very big difference. I'm going to let this just sit here and run. Just let it sit here and idle. As you can see, the idle is kind of slowly working its way down. This was a very good running chainsaw last time I had it running. As you can see by the spark plug. Now you notice as soon as I gave it gas, it immediately died. That gives us an indication that our low idle jet needs to be opened up a little bit. So what I wanted you to see right there's a lot of times two-stroke engines in general, whether it's a weed eater or a chainsaw, you notice how I had to feather the throttle to get the RPMs to come up to finally get it up to high idle. Once it was at high idle, I really liked the sound of that. You want it to be a nice, smooth, solid, perfect, just wide open. RPMs are nice and smooth all the way across. You don't want to hear that at the very top. If it's doing that, you're not actually getting all the RPMs you could out of it, and you're going to need to make a few adjustments. So what generally happens is when you're trying to go from the low idle or idle to high idle, wide open throttle, there's that in-between zone, and that's where a lot of times you have issues, and that's very easy to adjust, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. On the side of your chainsaw, you're going to see there's 3 little notations right here. One of them right here is going to say T, one of them is going to say L, and one of them is going to say H. T is for your basically your idle. That's your throttle adjustment. So you can turn that in to bring your idle up higher if it's idling too low. Your high, that's where you're going to adjust it wide open throttle, and that's where you're going to get rid of that shakiness in the engine, the sound with it at wide open throttle. You'll adjust that until that goes away. The low idle screw, that's where you're going to go ahead and richen that up to make it snappy off the throttle. You want to be able to just pull the trigger and it immediately just goes straight to high idle. So we're going to do that real quick. I'm going to need a pocket screwdriver. So let me go grab that. If you don't have one, go get you one. You're going to need a small screwdriver, a little pocket screwdriver to work on these guys. So before you get started, make sure you also have a little pocket screwdriver. Okay, so I went and grabbed, you've seen these before, little pocket screwdrivers like this. I got you zoomed way in there because I want you to try to be able to see what I'm doing while this is running. Now, in the event, there are certain brands out there that, you know, they can't be easy to work with. And so you're going to have to go buy a kit that looks kind of like this. They may have goofy little sockets. There's like a D-shaped one, or they have little spline shaped ones. If I can get this thing out of the... Well, I have never... That's a lie. So like here's one. It's actually splined, and it's got like a little... It says right on it, Pac-Man. It's the Pac-Man style. So you can look inside of there. There's your little spline that kind of sticks out. So some brands can be a little bit ridiculous. They got their own special little, right? So go take a look at your chainsaw or your weed eater now and see if you need to get that. This guy right here, I think I paid $10 for this little kit on Amazon. It's got all kinds of different little shapes in there for all the different brands. So you can, get your thing going. So what I'm gonna do real quick, I'm gonna get this guy started and then I'll turn it around right here so hopefully you guys can see. We got our throttle adjuster right here. And you know what? I'm actually gonna take the cover off. You guys will be able to see it a lot easier. They give you the little cutout so you don't have to take the cover off, but I'm gonna take the cover off so you guys can see. Having the cover on or off doesn't necessarily make that big of a difference in the way the engine's going to run. Having your air filter on versus off will. So make sure the air filter is on, securely seated before you start tuning or adjusting your carburetor. So as you can see right here, if we look at the side of our little cover, high is going to be on the I guess to be your guys' right, and L, low, is going to be on your guys' left. So right here we can see we have this red guy and we have this white guy. And then we have our throttle adjustment screw right here, which you can use as a regular screwdriver, but this guy fits in there pretty nicely. So this is what we'll do to adjust the idle up or down. You want it to be able to idle at a fairly low RPM. With this guy, it doesn't have a brake on it, so I want this to idle at a low enough RPM that the chain does not spin. So let me get this guy started real quick. Okay. So we have it running. Let's turn the idle down. We want it to idle down as much as possible and still stay running nice and smooth. But we don't want it to die. And sometimes with two-stroke engines, they'll idle for a while and then they'll die. And if it does that, give it a quarter turn. Now, if you're first trying to get this thing to run, crank that sucker all the way in. Just get it started. Then we can mess with getting our adjustments down here, high and low idle, adjustments fine-tuned. Then we can come back and turn the idle down. So now I'm going to give it just a bump with the throttle. Did you hear how it bogged? We don't want that. So we're going to adjust the low. Did you notice how it immediately started to run? Not quite good enough. So we're going to give her another little. That's max adjustment there. That's a little bit boggy. Let's give it a little bit more. It died. So we need to go halfway between here and here. Let's get her started again. But you can see we're making progress. You notice how it didn't bog immediately, and immediately it did try to actually accelerate. I want to see. Yeah, we don't have to give it any throttle. It's warm now. See how it's running nice and smooth at low idle? That's good. Okay, let's get this guy cranked all the way up. You can hear the idle actually change as we adjust this screw. Hear it down. Hear it start to come up. That's our low idle adjustment. Let's start messing with our high idle a little bit. Start no choke. Perfect. now that it's nice and warm, we're going to go ahead and turn the idle down a little bit. Want to make sure that the chain is not moving. See how the chain is starting to move a little bit? The idle's too high. See how the chain is just barely wanting to move a little bit? Still a little bit too high. See how now we can just give it full throttle and it immediately accelerates? That's what you want. So that's how, just a nice, quick, easy adjustment. Once you get it, now this one obviously was really easy right off the get-go. It was just happy to run. One of the other things is you don't want to run it without bar oil for too long. Okay, kind of what we were doing right there is probably about the maximum amount of time. The bar oil helps keep the chain lubricated, but also helps keep the clutch lubricated, all your seals and stuff like that. So we want to try to keep all of that from getting completely chingered. So let's get some bar oil in this bad boy, and let's go trim up some trees. You can use any bar oil. I just grabbed this. This was, down at the local place. You can see a little smoke coming off of it. That's kind of, she's pretty crusty, so she's got some schmoo. Let's go ahead and fill this bad dude up with some bar oil. Okay. Now you do want to verify that the bar oil is coming out and onto the bar. It's very important. If you don't, it'll smoke the blade, your chain, it'll smoke the clutch, it'll smoke all kinds of stuff. So you want to make sure that there is oil coming out. And it shouldn't be a lot. We're going to start with just a little, just to kind of get her started. All right. Let's go trim up some trees. Now this guy, it's nice and warm, so we should be able to fire it first pull. Okay, maybe not. Okay, so you notice how I was spinning the chain, and you want to see a little strip of oil. So if we're not seeing that little strip of oil, we want to verify that this thing is oiling before we take it out and use it. If it's not oiling, that will smoke your chainsaw faster than anything. So let's go ahead and pop this cover off real quick. As you can see, this is a light duty chainsaw. It doesn't have any dogs. It doesn't even have plastic dogs. It's got no dogs. So we want to look inside of here and see. As you can see right here, she's pretty crusty in there. So that's probably why we're not getting any oil out of there. Obviously, she's pretty gnarly. Now just a quick tip. If you're working on something and you see these really coarse screws like that, that means that it's threaded into something plastic, right? Obviously, you can see right there, it's just directly into a piece of plastic. And it's not going to be threaded. So low torque, when you take it off or when you put it back on, low torque. Okay, so right here, I don't know if you can see, but there's this little guy right here, and you can see oil starting to weep out of that. So that's good. So I'm going to hit this with some brake clean real quick. Let's get all this scuzz out of here. Get all this cleaned up. We know we got our oiler is working, and then we'll put this all back together, and I'll show you how, at least on this home light, yours is probably going to be different, but I'll show you how to kind of verify, you know, get the chain tightened. That one's empty. Perfect. Let's go clean this guy already. Got her running. She's actually running pretty good, so let's give her a little cleanup. Let's make her look fairly respectable. I think what I'm going to do real quick, probably make a mess. I'm going to blow just very gently. Let's use an O-ring pick, gentlingly. All right, perfect. So with a little bit of air, just gentle air, you don't want to just, full tilt, but just a little bit of air, we're actually getting some of the oil to start working its way out. The oils kind of help the clutch, keep the clutch cool, but it also feeds into the chain itself. So now that we got it freed up, it's working, it's nice and smooth, let's go ahead and get this bad boy put back together. Let's go trim up some trees. Finger loose, which means I can spin them with my fingers, but the bar is not just flopping around. Let's go ahead and tighten this dude up. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay, that seems about right to me. Got holding the gas tank upside down, and she leaked a little bit. Okay, so now let's get this thing started up. Let's see if we can see some oil coming off of the chain. You do want to see like a line of actual oil. Like that's That's what you want to see. Little primer bulb's the wrong size. Let's turn it on. That's what you want. Okay. She's running good, she's idling good, and we got oil coming out on the chain. Let's go cut something. Can't even get in there. Cut a path.
You know, getting this chainsaw all fixed up and taking it out to prune these trees kind of reminds me of some of my favorite Bible verses. John 15, verses 5 through 8. Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. But if you remain in me, and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want, and it will be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great glory to my Father.
All right. Well, I'm really happy with this chainsaw. This thing actually worked perfectly, and I couldn't be happier. But I do want to say, prime example, couldn't get the right primer bulb, and so we had to get something just kind of make do. It's not ideal, but it works. So get out there right now, because you know the season, you know the time is coming up. You're going to need your chainsaw, you're going to need your weed eater. So get out there right now and figure out what it needs, get it running before you need it to run. Because you know it never fails. When you need it to run, it's not going to, and you're going to have to tinker around with it. So get out there and get your weed eater, get your chainsaw running. Speaking of which, next week we're going to be doing a weed eater because, you know, it's that time of year and we got to get all of our tools ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to be helping you figure out how to get your weed eater running. Maybe it hasn't ran in a couple years. Maybe it just hasn't ran since last summer. And it's just been sitting over the winter and it needs to get woken back up and get ready to put back to work. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. And have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful weekend.